every legendary fighter that dominated the skies, there are a dozen more that never made it past the drawing board, or worse, became flying death traps for the pilots tasked with testing them. In the high-stakes arms race of the Cold War, billions of dollars were gambled on radical designs that promised the future but delivered only disaster, bankruptcy, and mechanical heartbreak. This is the complete breakdown of every major failed American fighter jet program, from the technical nightmares to the greatest planes that never were. Vought F-7U Cutlass. Widely known as the Gutless Cutlass, this was easily one of the most dangerous aircraft ever to fly off a carrier deck. It was the Navy's first tailless production fighter, but its Westinghouse engines were a total catastrophe, producing barely enough thrust to keep it airborne. Over 25% of all Cutlasses built were lost in accidents, claiming the lives of 4 test pilots and 21 Navy aviators. It was so notoriously unreliable that pilots often joked it was safer to bail out than to try and land it. Vought F-6U Pirate. Vaught's first attempt at a jet for the Navy was a complete underperformer. It was officially labeled as submarginal in performance, meaning it was actually slower and less capable than the propeller-driven Corsairs it was supposed to replace. Despite using metallite, a sandwich of aluminum and balsa wood, for the skin, the aircraft simply didn't have the muscle to compete in the jet age and never saw a day of combat. McDonnell F-3H-1 Demon. While later versions of the Demon found some success, the early F-3H-1 models were a $200 million fiasco. The Westinghouse J-40 engine was prone to exploding or failing mid-flight without warning. 11 fatal crashes occurred in short succession, leading the Navy to ground the entire fleet. Eventually, 21 completed airframes were rendered useless and used only for ground maintenance training, a massive waste of 1950s defense spending. Bell P-59 Aerocomet. America's entry into the jet age was more of a whimper than a bang. The Aerocomet was the first U.S. jet fighter, but it was slower and less maneuverable than the P-51 Mustangs already in service. Because its performance was so lackluster, the Air Force realized it would be slaughtered in combat. It was quickly relegated to a trainer role, serving only as a stepping stone to better technology like the P-80 Shooting Star. Northrop YF-23 Black Widow II. Frequently cited by aviation buffs as the greatest fighter that never was, the YF-23 was the rival to the YF-22 in the Advanced Tactical Fighter competition. By many metrics, it was the superior plane. It was faster, stealthier, and had a more futuristic design. However, the Air Force ultimately chose the Lockheed YF-22 because it was more maneuverable and seen as a safer industrial choice with lower risk. The YF-23 remains a legendary what-if in the halls of aviation history. Boeing X-32. This was Boeing's high-stakes entry for the Joint Strike Fighter program. While it was a highly capable aircraft, its unfortunate smiling air intake made it the target of many jokes. More importantly, it lost the competition to the Lockheed X-35 because its direct lift system for vertical landings was far less efficient and caused more heat recirculation issues than Lockheed's sophisticated lift fan system. Northrop YF-17 Cobra. The YF-17 was a sleek twin-engine fighter that lost the lightweight fighter competition to the single-engine F-16. While it was technically a loser in that specific Air Force bid, it didn't die out. The Navy saw the potential of the twin-engine design for carrier operations, eventually evolving the failed Cobra into the highly successful F/A-18 Hornet fleet. Vought XF-8U-3 Crusader III. This aircraft was an absolute make 2.3 beast. It was faster, climbed quicker, and was more agile than almost anything else in the sky at the time. It lost the Navy's competition to the McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II for one reason: the Navy wanted a two-seat aircraft. They believed a dedicated radar intercept officer was necessary to handle the complex missile systems of the era, leaving the single-seat Crusader 3 in the dust. Northrop YA-9. Designed for the AX competition, the YA-9 was a rugged ground attack jet that met every single requirement the Air Force asked for. However, it lost out to the Fairchild Republic A-10 Thunderbolt II. The A-10's survivability features, including the famous titanium bathtub protecting the pilot and its offset front landing gear to accommodate the massive GAU-8 cannon, made it the clear winner for the CAS mission. Rockwell XFY-12. This aircraft represents one of the biggest failures of physics in military history. It was designed to use a thrust-augmented wing to achieve vertical takeoff, blowing engine exhaust through shutters in the wings. During tethered testing, the engineers made a soul-crushing discovery. The plane couldn't even lift its own weight off the ground, let alone a pilot, fuel, and weapons. The project was scrapped after millions were sunk into a plane that couldn't hover. Convair XFY-1 Pogo. The Pogo was a tail-sitter designed to take off vertically and land by backing down onto its tail. While it successfully flew and transitioned to horizontal flight, it was a pilot's nightmare. Trying to land the aircraft while looking over your shoulder to judge the distance to a moving ship's deck was considered suicidally difficult for the average pilot, and the program was canceled. Lockheed XFY Salmon, similar to the Pogo. The Salmon was a tail-sitter concept. It suffered from the same fatal flaw, the impossibility of a safe landing. Test pilots found the process of hovering backward toward the ground to be far too taxing and dangerous for operational use, leading the Navy to look toward more traditional catapult launches. Convair XF2Y-1 Sea Dart. The Sea Dart remains the world's only supersonic seaplane. It utilized retractable hydroskis to take off and land on open water, theoretically allowing supersonic fighters to operate without vulnerable runways. The dream ended in tragedy in 1954 when a prototype disintegrated in mid-air during a public demonstration. The violent vibration of the skis and the structural stress of water operations proved too much to overcome. North American XF-108 Rapier. The Rapier was designed to be the ultimate escort for the XB-70 Valkyrie bomber, capable of cruising at Mach 3. It was a massive twin-engine interceptor that would have dominated the sky, but it was canceled in 1959 before the first prototype was even finished. The rise of Soviet intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, meant that fast interceptors were no longer the priority, and the costs were simply too high to justify. Republic XF-103. This was a radical, needle-like design meant to hit Mach 3 and intercept Soviet bombers. It failed because it required a dual-cycle engine, part turbojet, part ramjet, that simply couldn't be built with the technology of the 1950s. The heat generated at those speeds also required a cockpit with no forward-facing windows, using a periscope instead, which pilots absolutely hated. Lockheed YF-12. The fighter version of the legendary SR-71 Blackbird, the YF-12, was the fastest interceptor ever built. It successfully test-fired missiles at Mach 3.2, but the program was killed by Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara in 1968. He wanted to save money during the Vietnam War and believed that satellite technology and missiles rendered a Mach 3 interceptor unnecessary. McDonnell Douglas A-12 Avenger II, known as the Flying Dorito. This was a stealthy carrier-based flying wing intended to replace the A-6 Intruder. It was a management disaster from start to finish. Massive weight overruns meant the plane would have been too heavy for carrier elevators, and the cost per airframe skyrocketed. Secretary Cheney canceled the program in 1991, leading to a decades-long legal battle over the wasted billions. McDonnell XF-85 Goblin. The Goblin was a tiny parasite fighter designed to be carried inside the bomb bay of a B-36 Peacemaker. The idea was to drop the fighter to defend the bomber and then re-hook it mid-flight. However, the turbulent air behind the massive B-36 made the docking process almost impossible. Even the military's best test pilots struggled to hook back up, and the project was abandoned as aerial refueling became a more viable option. Grumman XF-10F Jaguar. This 1952 prototype featured a variable sweep wing, but it was a mechanical nightmare. It had vicious handling characteristics and a complex wing sweep mechanism that was prone to failure. Only one was ever built, and the Navy test pilot who flew it reportedly told Grumman that the only thing the Jaguar was good for was filling up a scrapyard. Northrop F-20 Tiger Shark. The F-20 was a highly advanced, low-cost evolution of the F-5 Tiger. It was technically brilliant, capable of scrambling and being airborne in under 60 seconds. However, it was a commercial failure. The U.S. government began allowing the sale of the more complex F-16 to foreign allies, which completely wiped out the F-20's export market. Despite being a fantastic aircraft, no one bought it. Lockheed XF-90. Designed as a penetration fighter to escort bombers deep into Soviet territory, the XF-90 was incredibly rugged but suffered from being horribly underpowered. It was nicknamed the lead sled because it struggled to get off the ground. Interestingly, an XF-90 airframe survived a nuclear test blast in 1952, proving its durability, but it was never fast enough to be a viable combat fighter. Douglas F-5D Skylancer. The Skylancer was a refined, more powerful version of the F-4D Skyray. It was faster and more capable in every way, and early tests were promising. However, the Navy canceled it because they were worried that Douglas aircraft was becoming too dominant, and they wanted to keep other manufacturers like Vought and McDonnell in business to maintain a competitive industrial base. One of the few prototypes was later used by Neil Armstrong for NASA testing.